Good afternoon, everybody, and Honorable Sangha Guru and distinguished professors. I'm very happy to be talking about the Buddhist goal on particles, and also very nervous because I don't know how much I can talk about this, because there are two problems. One problem is every time when we talk about the Buddhist perspective, particle, whatever, it's very philosophical, and which is I don't have much fancy word, and the limitation of my English. So those two factors, which makes my topic is less boring. I hope not very boring. Anytime, if you don't get it, please stop me and ask to. Okay. So my topic is Buddhist goal on particles, which is how we understand about philosophically. I'm going to focus on mainly three things. First one is what is the origin of particle and how composed matter that things we around here and there. And the second is there an indivisible particle, or do Buddhists really talk about how it's talk about the dimensionless particle, which is fundamental particles? How about that? And third thing is, what is the nature of particle, or is the nature of whole things in general? First of all, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the origin of particles, as usually physics do or cosmology do, how the atom comes in the first place. When they talk about, they are starting to talk about how our universe forms. They start talking about the Big Bang, all these things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how the particles, all things comes in the first place in Buddhist perspective. According to Avatamsaka Sutra, which is a very old sutra, it says 10 causes of, there are 10 kind of causes and conditions by which all oceans world have been formed. Here, all ocean of world means they have an infinite number of world existence, such as it's a metaphor, because example, how many atoms exist in an ocean, or how many water drops exist in oceans. So that's just giving analogs how many number of universe exist. So which is basically, according to Buddhist perspective, the universe is multiverses. Okay. So, and the question is, actually in Buddhist we accepted the cyclic kind of universe and the fourth state of things. But in particular, this universe, they have mentioned 10 causes, but I'm going to focus to here. First one is the karma of sentient beings. We call collective karma. This is not really man cause of the universe, but they call cooperative conditions. The main cause is natural causation, which is how natural forces coming. In here, obviously they're talking about the karma, collective karma, which means before this universe formed, they have a number of sentient beings. So original particle and matters, I'm going to talk about the two systems. We usually call the two system, which is a Kalachakra system or Kalachakra theory, especially or material cause. Both Abhidharma and the Kalachakra system, except the cooperative condition is collective karma, but the different is material causes. According to Kalachakra, they call 6 fundamental constituents, which is a material cause for the universe. In Abhidharma theory, there's a little different material cause. They are talking about 8 fundamental constituent, and also the collective karma is cooperative condition, same as Kalachakra. Now I'm going to a little bit talk about Kalachakra theory. And then Kalachara, what is the sixth constituent material cause is the four source of particles and the empty particle and the space particles. Four source of particle is usually we called like earth and fire and so on, like Aristotle talking about, if you guys know, not familiar. Here I'm mainly to focus on the two things. One is they're talking about the empty particles, which is the empty particles is really other than, it's a sort of like you're talking about other particles' natures. For my teacher, my astronomy teacher, Chris M.B., usually one of the famous, I think German philosopher saying, maybe Lebanon, saying, why there's something rather than nothing. So it's a part of I would like to answer, or it's a great famous Indian philosopher, 2nd century, called Nagarjuna. And he says, everything is possible because everything is emptiness. So because emptiness allows all things happen. If I give simple metaphor, we can do so many things, act like all these trees grow and all these things because space allows do that. If the space made some kind of a role, then we cannot move each other. Sort of that, and Nagarjuna also saying, because since all nature, particle nature is emptiness, and that can particle interact each other and particle composite, and then finally get to the matter. And another particle called space particle. The space particles are not really substantial particles. It's sort of like a potential that all the particles arise. So its conclusion probably I could do is, this is the origin of all present physical things. It's more like energy. So one, as I mentioned, we accept the universe is a kind of cycling. So the one universe is completely disappear. And there's a kind of a non-manifest state. Nothing comes. At that state only exists of the space particle, which we cannot see. But that will cause later come all the tiny particles. Then finally we'll get all the matters. Now I'm going to talk about a little bit about the Abhidharma systems. Abhidharma schools, they didn't mention what is the origin of the particles, but they mentioned how to evolve, how to conform to the matter. So first they say three basic building blocks, which is a fundamental unit of language is letter, and a fundamental unit of matter is partless particle, which is dimensionless particle. And also fundamental unit of time is moment, partless moment. Many scientists think about it. Why are you talking about why you Buddhists talk about lots of partless particles? I'm going to tell you the reason we talk a lot about the partless particle coming to the partless particles. If I compare to it's just roughly you'll get idea what kind of size is what is smallest is talking about in Abhidharma theory compared to particle science right now. They have I think 11 scales. Each scale is 7 factors. It's a small to getting big, and probably I'm using this. Yeah. The length of fingernail, it's a partless particle, then atom particle. All those names is kind of funny ones. Even rabbit and sheep, cow, all these things. But it's just you can consider just name of one type of particles. Okay. So in a fingernail, with a fingernail, I just assume 1.8 centimeters. Then partless particle, according to Abhidharma's theory, partless particle would be. And the diameter of partless particle will be 9.10 times minus 10 centimeters, something like that. So let's look at compared to science. In science, average atom diameter atom is 10 to the minus 8 centimeter, which is a little bigger than this, and then nucleus 10 to the minus 12 centimeters. It's very hard to see. That's why I'm reading. So it's sort of like here, middle. I would like to mention, within the Buddhist school, we have a lot different, refuse each other with many reasons. One of the things is, even though Abhidharma talk about atomic substance, but the other, scholars, they really, when they're defining, really, there's not really substance. It's more like a potential. For example, and this has to be nature, fire, because it's not, doesn't mean they have some sort of substantial put out of the earth particles. It has sustained potential, or it's a kind of movement plus that we call like air particles. They have some sort of potential we can movement, or we can make heat it up. That means they have a sort of like hidden natures. This is a really, it's a really kind of important point, because Tibetan medicines and also yogi, we practice lots of, fundamental this, talking about this, when they're talking about 8 atomic substance, which really doesn't mean they have some sort of, substance that we can pull out. It really means they are kind of nature, kind of potential. So that's why, okay. That's fast forward. My second part is there a partless particle? Within the Buddhist school, how they talk about the partless particles. First of all, Abhidharma school. According to Abhidharma school, at the time was very early Buddhist school, so they accepted elementary particles, then getting to atoms, then getting to molecules. We call very specific Tibetan names. Just make sure to not really talking about the atoms. It's just kind of equivalent. They just you can think about getting a little bigger, okay? And also they talk about the elementary particle are ultimate indivisible. The concept is there has to be some sort of unbreakable. We cannot make it smaller. That you talk about water, we can make less and less, and somehow we can't call water anymore. And then sort of that idea, according to Abhidharma, if we can make cut in, very deductionism ways, and they have some sort of fundamental, we cannot break down anymore. Because otherwise, we cannot become real things, become existed. So that's the, say like that. Okay. And then argument comes from other schools. They're rejected. Because they says, according to famous Indian Nalanda master, 4th century, called the Vasubandhu, he argues, if there is partless particles, and how the matters possible, because when you compose, it's supposed to be they have 6 dimensionless particles. How did compose possible? Do they touch or not? If they touch, do they touch partially or do they touch completely? If they touch partially, then you can touch one side, you cannot touch the other side. Then we can think about this conceptually, we can divisible. So if they touch completely, then sort of emerge and then never getting bigger. So, and that's argument to here. According to Abhidharma, they forms like this, the sort of like answer they are giving without touching, with the space. And then like this, for example, this is center, and then this is up, and this is down, this is maybe coordinate directions, and a north, east, and south, and west. Some sort of state like this with the space. Then question is, if they have a space, how can you call this is one thing? And then how can they go far away? And they said like they held it together, sort of maybe air or sort of chemical potentials to hold it together. And that allows to become matters. Like this. And then they have a kind of a argument giving example. when you're sticking drumstick to the drums, if they don't touch it, how they make sounds produce? Abhidharma says that's not really touching. They have when they're close enough, there's some sort of a chemical potential going to that makes allowed to sound, which is interesting. And then they have another school called the Sudender. They're not argue about the partless, but they argue about within the space. The argument goes like this. Okay, according to Abhidharma theory, something like this. Okay, the Sudender says, according to Abhidharma, this one is one object. And then maybe there's a center, one dimensionless particle. Then surround, they have a bunch of dimensionless particles. And within that is space. They argue it's not possible. If they have a space, and then there has to be some other, they call the light particle coming, toward that. And also the dark particle, and then going into that. So it's basically saying there's impossible to the between space. Like this morning, one student asking about particle is empty. So it's a standard to really reject that idea, because if they have a space, then they have some sort of things going on. They call like dark particles, which is very, even though they didn't mention what is dark particles, maybe they're talking about just moon is sort of like made of particle, or they are talking about something going on, even though we don't know yet. There's something must be going on if there's empty. Okay, that's why they're saying is there's no empty, and even though they still accepted the dimensionless particle, they're close enough withoot space. This one is coming to similar to argument about the partless particles. This comes from more like we usually considering high advanced for the schools, which is part of the Madhyamaka schools. One of the famous, the name is Aryadeva, in the 2nd century, he's disciple of the Nagarjuna. He was really arguing about the partless particle. Why you accept the first place of they have a fundamental things, kind of, all the things exist. Because this really comes from the idea of the emptiness. Because things existing because to the interdependence. You don't need really, there's a kind of a core underneath, because things can function together. So that's argument, 2 arguments. I'm not going to talk much about that. So, and third, my point is nature of particles. One of the things is I'm going to mention here 2, but one more things. One is impermanent, other one is interdependence, which is another name of emptiness, and one is going to be mental construction, if I get time. So it's according to Buddhist theory, and particle, whatever things, everything is impermanent. So it's particle is not permanent in the sense of having unchanging static identities. And then we are talking about the 2 impermanent, gross level and a very subtle level. Gross level, we can experience changing seasons, getting old age, and so on and so forth, and losing the all these many things. But the subtle level, we can change every moment. That's why we talk about the partless moment. Partless moment means if we narrow down to like physical things, we can also narrow down to the time. There's a very long time and a very short time. So in order to really fully understand if you are impermanent, you have to understand kind of every moment, even shortest moment change. Everything is changed. That gives to real understanding of the impermanence. So here we can see the different signs in Buddhism, because Buddhism, we are trying to not understand intellectually what is nature of things. And also we are trying to intellectual knowledge that's cognitively, that's make to some sort of impact our behavior. For example, impermanent. If we think it's more impermanent, for example, I'm going to age, I'm going to die, certain, then you will think something a little different, because one of the scientists says, when I realize I'm no longer stay in the in this planet, I know the more important for other things, for doing things rather my famous, rather my money, whatever. It's more important for the humanity, because that's live much longer than me. So see, there is even though intellectual knowledge is, some of the intellectual knowledge is not that's just knowledge, it affect your behavior and that. So it's we consider emptiness also that, not intellectually knowledge. When we first intellectually to know, and then we think, and then we meditate, that will affect to your behavior. That's the kind of purpose for the Buddhism, why we are kind of trying to understand the nature of the world as the scientists do. Okay, that's I mentioned about another nature of particle or nature of all things. And famous Indian scholar Nagarjuna says, since there's nothing, whatever, there's no dependently existence. For that reason, there's nothing whatsoever that is not empty. And I would like to give two pictures. One of the famous, I think one scientist, gives sort of that's similar to the illustrated to classical physics, to the modern physics. I also like to give some, some Buddhist Abhidharma school and the Kalachara or Madhyamika school. You can see Abhidharma school, why they accept the foundation of particles. And they are really focusing on the physical things. And then I'm going to tell why one of the school called the mind-only school, everything is mental projections. So according to Madhyamika school, both of them is going to extreme, because one is focused on much more on the physical things, and the other one is much more focused on the mind. So it has to be middle, because it's a connections. Everything is dependent on each other. So this is, you can see this is the maybe mind. This is the physical things. They just kind of connection is just very tiny. So in Madhyamika school, it's not very important to the physical, not very important to the mind, but relationship is more important. The relationship is key things to understand how to everything is to relate each others. As I mentioned, according to Madhyamika schools, since everything is empty, then everything is possible. So here's the says, in each atom of realm of the universe, there exists vast ocean of the world systems. So it's saying like crazy idea. One tiny bit of single atoms can fit, the countless number of universe on that, which really telling is the size is very relative. There's no absolutely size. Your point, they may be very big. My point is maybe very small. So it's a size is really relative. And also similar, talking about the time also. There's a very, very short time according to our point of view. And maybe some other, there's the kind of, other realm or other maybe sentence beings. And they can feel very, very long. So that means the time also very relative, not the absolute time. It's just that I'm going to do. In the historical progression of physics, we move from view of atom and time being continuous to a view of quantization, which is mentioned this morning, Professor Ted. Is the progression of Buddhist thought similar or the opposite? Seems like opposite, because Abhidharma school, they accepted foundation of dimensionless particles. Then, the Madhyamika school seems like I mean, at least conceptually, all the physical things kind of we can divide it smaller and smaller. So that's why I'm just leave open questions. Another one is Buddhist thought and enormously hold fundamental particle to be momentarily changing. Is this talking about impermanent? But modern physics there can be unchanging particle, so which is true. I have heard talk with many scientists. They said, like, for example, a proton is we never observe the proton decays. It seems like unchanging, unless other kind of interaction happens. Otherwise, it seems like permanent. So according to that, in the Buddhist, we talking about everything is impermanent. How does And third question is, Buddhists accept that phenomena exist in dependence on the observer mind, and thought in this view, wouldn't nothing exist before observer come into existence? This is maybe going to talk about observer and things really that. The last question is, can Buddhists accept the rhetoric causality? I don't know this the terms of rhetoric causality, which basically I have heard. Also, there's a professor called Victor Mansfeld. He composed about Buddhism and modern physics. He said one of the biggest challenge he's seen in Buddhist philosophy and the quantum mechanics, they talk about kind of causality, which is different than classical causations, which is something happen, some sort of effect happening before the cause. Would that be the biggest challenge? Because in the Buddhist, it's really accept the causation as classical physics, which is one of the core Buddhist philosophical ideas. So he said, also I'm just wanted to, you can talk more about that. Thank you.
So Thabke, this is a question that came out when you were talking of cooperative causes and substantial causes.
Okay.
Right? And it seems like at least in some of the schools of thought, the substantial cause is coming out from natural causation, the material world.
Right.
And the karma of sentient beings is the cooperative cause.
Yeah.
Now, sentient beings, is it fair to say, represent the mental world?
Yes.
So is that then saying that the substantive cause, the real cause for everything is material?
Okay.
Is the question clear?
I'm
wondering whether the argument is saying that the main cause of everything, the natural cause, is material, and the mental, the karma of sentient beings, which is the mental part, just happens to be cooperative. So even the karma would be something that would come about because of the substantive cause.
Yes. Yeah, I think one thing is here clearly mentions, we are really emphasize of natural causation because one of the Buddhism is different than other maybe philosophy and religions. We don't accept the creators. We don't accept the beginning. So that means it's a kind of natural process. It's just going, it's changing, it's impermanently, but it's always there. Something cyclically. So so that's it has to be natural process like how to I don't know, it's a natural world, but then how do things happen? Sometimes very bad weather, sometimes good weather, and then why I was here, not in America, why I was born in Tibet, not in America. So they have some sort of like karma also cooperate with them. So it's a kind of together. They have two kind of causes. That's what I'm saying. Maybe.
But does Buddhism say that one cause, the substantive cause, is more important than the cooperative cause? Like with.
I mean, it's both of really important. It's in order to become like some sort of mature one effect, you need so many causes. Those are the main causes, but they have so many causes. Sometimes when you asking to the causes, then they have a story when they ask to the Buddha, when they ask to the cause, and Buddha says we cannot, mention it, but there are so many small cause, and in number also it's a time. Some of the cause you met very long time, and some of the just very recently. So it's so many, but those are the main causes.
Last the tindush misi ani la moa che sunso ani tiwa di kharis la vi mena kerang tamshi k nanglo la ani tanda nileng gi juda lenji chining gi juse ke je song che za ani nileng gi judi ani rangjung ki ani ngobu den zula shaigres ani lenji chining di ani tanda ani simjeng ki ani chindu gi les ya de la shaigres che za ta this edu zambala ani dinini k nanglo ni ani zo di ani nileng chining gi judi imba song za ani nangju gi nanglo la ani chwe tam chi zo ani rang ta nileng gi judi rangshin ki ngobu den zo chi ki ani sujing ngobu den le chuma re sigiyar west like any tiwa den rich kusu den koranki lendi ta nori na kerang si cha cheda ani chezang anzu ani nangbe taduk nanglola jigden kobo khe ling yo mares cheza chik kobo khe ling mewa songza ani ngobo thamji khandis chungbare chhe thamji khandis chungbare sidu sambala ani ko rangyung ki ani neju neluk chik tone ani deshi gyawa mato ani dili shembe ki ani nyeling gyu shembala ani shaya mewa songza ani rangyung sia ki ani de sha ko ya de cha de yores cheza da tiganan shi ta ani yudini gena kurang chardo teoguela judini nanglo ne kecha de karis nyuling chining jud kecha marves dende teoku songone di gelang lendi ani chirda ani judini shagi ores nyuling chining juda ani lenjik chining ju shagi ore ina ya ani judini le ani shembe ju shemba mewe kecha mares ani tando chik dumji she bimbana ngema ani tombala ya ani korang kiloma dindijik ya kandishu ores ani jundes ya di kol khandes yores jus ya di khatse yores du sambala jus ya di ani beda changa thai imba song songza dingums yores ya ki ani lengya tu mare she tu mare se ya chik ani dusma lengkyo yores chizan dila du sambala manzu nyelen da lenji chin ki ani keja shigi ordini imbe na ya ani dile shembe nganzu beda samyulen deve ki ani gumangbu shi uchi she gu yores.
So in physics, atoms have three basic constituents. You mentioned that there was two schools, some which have 6 and some which have 8 fundamental. So how do you rationalize the difference between, so if I go to any physicists around the world, they'll always say there's 3 particles, electrons, protons, and neutrons. How do you rationalize the difference between schools which might say there's 6 and some there might be 8?
It's not exactly the same thing, physicists expect, because in the Buddhist school, they have no kind of, the final decisionment. It's they have lots of philosophical different ideas. So you can study and then you can think about, and then they have both have a logical sense, but not very kind of, every people kind of accept it like scientists. So it's one thing is different. It's Buddhist, even though we call like philosophy, but they have a lot of personal things. So many things personal. In science, they have a kind of public, because the experiment shows everyone can access. So I don't know much, but maybe there are lots of Sangha monks. And some of them they can give the answers, or that.
Kerang kita mesti kenal lah. Nangbe dundeng kita mesti kerja sih kasula. Ane cumta kasih ki ane dundeng ki cubja sih orang sigdus. Kasih ki gay orang sih dundeng sigdus. Ceza ane Quran suy ki pensiun ki parla. Ane tumong ki khele ki ane tangga cime bimena. Ane kerang nang pensiun ta dikwa khandis cigi orang. Nangdi khandis cigi orang sih di tiwa redua. Ceza ane Longkam serik nanglo chingbi bena nganzu dundeng chik nanglo la ane chobje ki ane du chunga ane sum yore siya de longkam serik ba changme ki kheling gi res chezan ta nangba chu kelan so mandaw imba sonza kheling khandes chig res du chambala ane Geshe Thabke la ki lendi ane chedan thinde res ina ya ane nganzu nangbe ki ane shunglu ki nanglo la ane de reda sin thakju chin ki ane khangsa chira ba chik da tha jungi khangsa chira ba chik yodi yo mares cheza de la du chamba la ane ko samju manda mangbu yores khashi ki shi yores gi gi re khashi ki tu gi re gi gi re khashi ki ge gi re gi yor tamju samma samju re so so gi dik to la samno tang yung du chamba la ane o di gyunsen de theba yung sa re di gyunsen de thig min du samje so so gi dik to la ane ke len da na min so yung chu res cheza ta nangju da chiri ni de manda yung go ye gyunsen ji khawa thuk do yores la du chamba la chiri ki namsha mangbuji kharis la ban chi yule jeba chi mi sami ku tyen yebe ki ane jeba chi tan yimba sonza o ta sumdu da ni du da se chi ntumu khelen to ba yung yares nangbe ki namsha mangbuji nang samno dan dewa yo sonza khangsa ger su su ki samno tang tang ki samno ki takche thon chung yo sonza ane din tyen mi du zambala ane changme ki khelen ba chingsu ji yung tu go mares.
Thabke, can I ask you, in Buddhism, what is the benefit or motivation for having these different schools describing these different understandings of particles?
Okay. One thing you can think about in Buddhism sometimes when we talk about even though we are trying to seek to the nature of realities, but it always has to be purpose. For some practitioners, they are more focused to understand of the air particle or air nature because it's a when they're practicing to the yogi, they need to sort of that. According to that sort of like when they got some experience, when they're teaching to the student, and then they make some sort of a specific kind of categories which helps to them better practice. And also when we talk about the 5 element or 6, sometimes we call 6 element, sometimes 4 element, sometimes 5 element. They have each own purpose. For some some practitioners, when they're practicing what I'm going to do when I'm going to die, what kind of thinking to the practice, and then they have 5 elements and how to be dissolved this in our consciousness in our mind to dissolve, and what kind of practice should help that I'm going to better my next life. So sort of that. Another thing is the Buddhist school is really kind of a philosophical idea which is not true. Sometimes the purpose of that is you can think about more, you can more imaginable. That makes your mind is more grow, your mind is more often, and to understand more nature of reality. So that's my answer.
Nangbe ki thumda denzo nanglo la ane sheda manda yungu duwas manda yowa dela ane ke khariores khepsan khariores goba khariores ya ki tiwa dela ane gistab gi laglen di khare shaslavi be na jeda ane manzo ki nangbe ki thumda denzo changme ki ane shingobu ki ne luk ane shindo chia shingobu ki ne luk ten phebya di nang thumda changme ki miyures yimbe na ya ane chi khare slavi be na ane so ki nyamlen ki gongol la pawe ki ane so le remale da lokha choma cho di pendo cheju nazo yungu yor special shana ane jiga lung gumni ki nengyur pa jigle cha sha yimbe na ane jiga jungwa lung sia di ki ane yodang khande yor jungwa lung sia di ki rangshin khande yor tinzo shendo chungbe na kora ane nyamle da thega dewa yubi ki gyumzen tene kora limbe na ane pendo cha yungu yor chezan dile sambala nyamle ko thone suzuki ane mecho thade yungu yores ane thega nangshi ane manzo jungwa ki geje shidu sambal khashi ken jungwa nga yore sigi yore khashi ken jungwa hi yore sigi yore khashi ken jungwa thuk sigi yore imbe na ya khandar ching jungwa den su ki nezu de shenje jungwa shiwe kapsula nga zo timrim ki namsha den zu chika san chul tem chik lung chun lung tem se jore dine namshi lung tem se den zu ki timrim den zu gombe ki thone ane suzu ki tanda nyamlen cheya da den zu cheya dila pendo yung yores khanda manda nangbe ki ane taru manda wa sha den zu sangma ane samlu ki thone sha wa cha di yores kabre ane samlu nanglo la samju sungwa denzo demba imbe chaba yo mares demba membe ina ya dende ke samju thade simbe ke gyumjel tene kerang lo de khuyang cha du yore khuyang cha be ke gyumjel tene kerang ki khadu imbe na neju sawa shen tobya ki ene khogab yongwa dende cha de yore chaza di kabre ene gongol ta gu yores.
So maybe one question from the audience before we move on to our next talk.
Yeah, my question is to Geshe Thabke la. Of course, you are the presenter, so But this is really not to target you, but there is like common understanding among the Buddhist society that everything is created by karma, right? And there is also quotation in the Madhyamika Avatara, Semnye Jine, Rawa, and Jigden Nazoda, and Nikarse, no Jinjik, Hindu Nazo, Gundawa Malu Lele Jebarsum. So it is the mind, there is a quotation which says, this multifarious universe is created by the mind. Therefore, it is said that all sentient beings are products of karma, created by karma. That's why, you know, how would you interpret this, number one? Number two, even in the case of karma, it could be a substantial cause also. So, can you throw some light on that?
You know, it's very hard questions. One thing is it's also interesting. Maybe we can talk more about that. What is the difference? Even though we don't accept the creators, we don't accept the God or whatever, but we still accept the karma, which is it's something happened to me because of my previous karma. It seems like there's no free the free will or free lunch. It's already fixed. You can do maybe how much effort you can do, you are going to pour. How much effort you did, if you don't have a karma, you are going to pour. Sort of that idea, some sort of idea we are going to have. This is not true, because even they have a karma, which is one of cause. So you can effort do so many things. So it's sometimes you cannot change to your karma, but you can make some sort of prevent the result. For example, if you are getting sick and they have a lot of choices, you can try to treatment or you can going to die. So it's because I'm sick, you just but they have so many choices. So that means karma is not really kind of very dictate, kind of yeah, kind of creator. It's a very distinct. As karma really means it's just action, right? It's a Sanskrit word, karma. It's action. So if you do the actions, and then you will get good things. That doesn't.
But what about his question about things coming into existence because of the mind?
Oh, mind.
Let us do this in the dialogue form, so it is more interesting.
Okay.
Because even from the point of view of the notion of karma, I always say there's no fatalistic idea there. There's no idea that we are all predetermined, nothing can be done. That idea is not there. So
Right.
as you also mentioned.
Right.
But so even in the case of like substantial cause, even if something is produced by certain substantial cause, let us call it natural process, whatever, that also can be changed through our activities.
Yes.
So that is not the justification to say that karma cannot be the main cause.
Right.
You see, so we really need to think why karma cannot be the main cause, because in the text there are so many quotations saying that the whole universe, the whole sentient beings are created by karma.
Yeah.
Without having the connotation that our fate is determined. Still we can say yes, karma is very, very important, meaning action is very important.
Right.
That action may be action of the past,
Right.
of the immediate recent days, or even this morning. So action is very important.
Right.
So I still feel like pushing this point that karma is really important, one of the most important thing. And I even go to the extent of saying, in Buddhism we say ignorance is root cause of suffering.
Right.
These days in addition to that, I started saying inaction is the cause of suffering.
One of the things is in many Buddhist texts is so much emphasis on the karma because it's a willing or telling to do some actions, to do some good actions, even though your good action may not guaranteed everything is going to perfect, but it will lead you to the positive side. That's why the karma is, it's very important. It's that sometimes it makes sound karma is completely dictate everything, but not really means dictate. It's a kind of important. Telling to the to the others, really important to do some good actions, good motivation, because that lead you to so.
dadi shida shimo che ani lesya di kechimbu chichung khawas shagure lesya di ani nilengi ani jul shavi imbena ya nilengi ju mewa so tu yobe ki jumzen tene ani lek sangme ki nami mi mo wa tone ani shaya da tigana shita nganzu namgi les le du sambala nganzu ki khari chevi imbena ani cheya meding sangma tangbungwe ne ta chue simba ani jigden ko babu ta chue banang sing nganzu ki ne ju sangma ta chue sabe ki kodun ting du cheza dinde 토니 아니 레스야 되는데 랑 말에 삼주지 토니 아니 레콜 아니 포지티비티 링 같이 중소